Hypothetical situation. You find out that the primary developer of an open source application which you use every day identifies as a trans bisexual squirrel who says that non-leftists are beeping fascists and Nazis. How does this impact your trust of the code which this person has written? I put this poll up on X just over the weekend, and this was inspired by a real thing. You may be thinking to yourself, trans bisexual squirrel, Lunduke, you done lost your mind. Well, this is a real thing that was cropping up. The founder of Elementary OS, of course, the Linux distribution, says that the creator of AppImage is against human rights and follows a quote, known Nazi piece of beep, meaning me, and creates fashtech, right? So fascist software. And others on Mastodon, because of course they're on Mastodon, began quickly agreeing with the Elementary OS founder dude, such as a particular squirrel trans femme bisexual, which I believe means a man who thinks he's a girl who thinks he's a squirrel. Pretty sure that's what that means. Who added that Ex Libre, Omarchy, and AppImage are all made, quote, primarily by fascists. And so here's a few screenshots of it just so you can see. Squirrel, trans femme, bisexual girl. I believe it's a man. It's a grown man. It's not like a little boy or something. It's a grown man who thinks he's a little girl, transgendered, bisexual squirrel. Also, he says Slava Ukrainian, free Palestine. I'm pretty sure if you go to Palestine as a transgendered squirrel, you don't live too long. But anyway, so they were yelling about all this, and here's the thing. It's a day that ends in Y. Open source leftist activists, including people who run the major projects, post crazy stuff like this there all the time, all day, every day. It's nuts, right? It's completely off the charts nuts, which really, just from a high level standpoint, what impact does that have on the trust that you have in software? So I put up a poll. You know, does having a trans bisexual squirrel who says that anyone who's not a leftist is a beeping fascist and a Nazi, how does that impact your trust of the code in the person that's written, this code that this person's written? And here's the thing. That's not just a real thing that we actually have to face. Like, that's not just a real question. Like, there's not just one of those. There's a huge number of leftist open source activists that are developers, project contributors, and even project founders and leaders that are some variation therein, who are trans, animal, hybrid people who say that you should bash the fash. That's it's a regular thing, not normal, but regular thing in open source world, right? So do you trust it more or less? 3 options: trust the code more, no change in trust, and trust the code less. 4.7% of respondents out of 1,295 said I would trust the code more. I got to assume some of them are making a joke, but I think some people are actually serious here, because this poll got shared around on Mastodon and Blue Sky. It got shared around on the more fringe areas within X as well. So the results came from a lot of different people. It wasn't just Lunduke Journal watchers. 21.2% said there would be no change in trust. And 74.1% said they would trust the code less. So roughly 3/4 of everyone, the vast, overwhelming majority of people were like, yeah, trans bisexual squirrel, nope, I'm out. I trust the code less in that circumstance. Now, let's ask the obvious question then. What happens if we have something very different here? So, another poll. Hypothetical. You find out that the primary developer of an open source application you use daily is a married father of 3 who prays with his kids, regularly attends religious services, and voted for Trump. Specifically, how does this impact your trust of the code that this person has written? 38.8% said they trust the code more. 51.4% said they would have no change in the trust. And 9.9% say they would trust the code less. Those are pretty extremely polar opposite differences. Not less than 10% say they would trust the code less if it's a Trump voter. 74.1% say they would trust the code less for that particular Nazi. Now, you may be saying to yourself, oh, but Lunduke, you included such extreme things in the leftist side. But here's the thing. This is how they represent themselves. I asked the question based on how people regularly represent themselves. And of the software developers and leaders on the right, which I've seen, that represent kind of who they are outside of coding, they represent themselves this way. They make it known that they voted for Trump. They attend religious services. They have religious beliefs. They're parents, et cetera, et cetera. And whereas on the flip side, that's not really the type of thing they talk about. They talk about how they want to bash the fash and effing kill effing Nazis, and how they are and what their modified surgical gender is, and how they are half animal, half person, and they want to do weird things with animals in the forest. This is what they represent of themselves, and so that's what I included here. Now, I asked a follow-up to this, where I said to ask people to think about the piece of software that they use the most often on their computer. And I asked, do you know what the political views are of the person or organization who makes that software? And 67.7% said they have no clue. And 25.8% said yes, they are left-leaning. And 6.5% they said yes, right-leaning. I'm guessing that 6.5% is probably the Brave web browser. Or maybe they use like Omarchi or something like that, and they view DHH as being a right-leaning person, which I don't even know that that's a completely accurate thing, but probably the Brave web browser, right? Because people use web browsers pretty often. I found this whole thing to be fascinating. Now, obviously, running a poll over on X is not the most scientific way to do things. We don't have control questions and groups, and we don't have a lot of other data to compare each answer with, which you really need if you're going to be scientific about it. But I just wanted to get a high-level viewpoint of does this impact a large number of people and how they would trust the code that they're running on their computer. And see, for me, it absolutely was. I would vote that I would trust the code less in the case of the Trans Squirrel, right? Because if someone is out there saying that they want to bash the fash and they are Antifa, because, I mean, come on, a large number of open source organizations say they are terrorists. They say, I am Antifa. Hear me roar. Let's use Molotov cocktails, blah, 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 blah. We're against Christians and Jews and white men and Trump and America and all these other things, right? So if they're against all those things and they're willing to side with terrorist organizations who commit violence and advocate for violence, then why wouldn't they also do something weird with the code? Why would they not? Of course they would. And so, I trust the code less. But it's not just that. It's not just their attitudes and their goals. It's their grasp on reality. If someone identifies, if there's a guy and he's like, I'm a woman now. Okay, that's crazy. That's a mental disorder. He doesn't have a grasp on reality. I'm also half squirrel. Okay. So you're nuts. At that point, that's nuts, right? If someone shows up and says, some guy with a beard and an Adam's apple goes, I'm a squirrel girl. I'm a little tiny lady squirrel. Okay. You don't let them in your house. You cross the road quickly to get away from them. And you certainly as heck don't trust your sensitive data to them. Because even if they're not there to hurt you, that's crazy. Their grasp on reality is limited at best. And of course, I would trust that code less. I mean, that to me, that seems utterly obvious. Now, I want I want to say something very, very specific here, because undoubtedly this particular show will get demonetized and probably delisted while I get struck from YouTube. YouTube might even remove my channel entirely for talking about these things. Done it before. I mean, whatever. They gave me the 100,000 subscribers plaque, so I'm good. But here's the thing. Saying all of this is not saying that trans people identify as trans are bad, nor is it saying that they are not human. It is just saying that that is a mental disorder that is pretty messed up in the head. And I hope legitimately that they can get help for themselves, because man, I would hate to go through life with my brain that screwed up. That's messed up, and I feel bad for them. Now, it's hard. It's really hard to feel bad for people who are advocating for your murder, right? And there's so many trans leftist activists within the open source world who have been publicly advocating for my murder. They talk about it regularly. They talk about taking out hits on me. They talk about murdering Lunduke regularly. So it's really hard to come out and say, hey, I wish them the best. But the reality is I do, because they're messed up. They're broken upstairs in the brain department, and they need to get some help, because I think when you see people who are advocating for murder of other people just for disagreeing with them, you know something else is wrong. It's not just that one problem, right? You see the people out there within the open source world that they don't know what gender they are. They don't even know what species they are. Sometimes they don't know what age they are. They want to identify like as a tween girl, cat with cat ears, but in reality, they're a 37-year-old single man. Like it's weird. They're broken and they need help. And so we're not advocating for violence. We're not advocating for ostracizing. We're not advocating for that someone is less than human. We're just saying, man, they need help. And do I trust the code they're writing? Of course not. If someone doesn't have a grasp on reality, I don't trust the code that they're writing. If I spent a lot of years as a dev manager and a dev executive, right? I started out my software engineering journey at the lowest of the ranks. I was an entry-level software tester when I started work when I was 19 years old at Microsoft. And I moved up the ranks. I was a dev test, meaning I made software in the testing department. And then I was a developer, and then I was a dev manager, and then I was a director of development. And eventually I got to plant my flag on the top of that hill, and I got to say I was a vice president of technology or engineering at a couple of little different companies. And throughout all that period of time, I got the opportunity to hire and fire a lot of programmers. And if I was hiring for a dev, and a dev came in, and he was a 37-year-old man with the world's largest Adam's apple. And he came in, and he was dressed like an 11-year-old girl / squirrel. And he began to tell me that that's what he is an 11-year-old girl squirrel. I don't think I'd hire him. And it's not because I am going to be, I guess, racist against squirrels, nor is it that I would be sexist against women, or in this case, little girls. It's because the person would clearly have a tenuous grasp on reality and was probably very unstable. And by bringing them into the work environment, I would be creating a dangerous work environment, an unstable work environment for everyone else that was trying to get their work done. So trying to get through the current sprint, trying to ship the current release. And we would have the girl squirrel there. And who knows, maybe that person would never wig out and go crazy. But honestly, yeah, you would always be wondering, because that's crazy. That's crazy. That's not, oh, that person has a different religion than me. No, that's not that. Oh, that person comes from a different country and speaks a different original language than me. No, that's not an issue either. This is, I think, universal. I think anyone from from anywhere is going to look at the old man who thinks he's a girl squirrel and think, okay, there's something wrong there. I'm not going to trust that person to build my back end and database wrappers. Like, I'm just not going to do that. So no, I would not trust that person more. And I think the majority of people out there would generally agree with that. I'm going to get yelled at for this episode, most definitely. But sometimes we have to just say obvious, honest, normal things. This isn't really about being left-leaning or right-leaning politically. This is just about being honest and normal. And hoping the best for an awful lot of people that clearly need a little bit of help. Thank you to the Lunduke Journal subscribers for making it possible, for helping the Lunduke Journal to reach millions of people every single month. It's awesome. We broke 10 million views per month a couple months back, and we're still growing strong every single month. November was our biggest month ever, and it just keeps getting bigger and bigger. December's on track to be our largest ever, and we're only just a little over a week in, and I don't know how that's possible. December is usually the quieter month. But it still just keeps on growing. So thank you to everyone who helps spread the word. Thank you to everyone who grabs up a free subscription in all the different places at lunduke.com where you can watch and listen and interact with the Lunduke Journal. And thank you from the bottom of my heart to all of the people who grab a paid subscription to the Lunduke Journal. You notice there's no, big tech sponsorship. There's no, this episode brought to you by Maggie Burger, Squares Fluke and Flagon. There's none of that here. None of it. Enter promo code Lunduke at checkout. No, don't. Excuse me. Doing that voice, doing the Square Fluke and Flagon voice. Put a frog in my throat. Holy smokes, I wish I had a beverage right here. But go to lunduke.com and grab a subscription. Just grab a subscription and it keeps the Lunduke Journal going, keeps me totally big tech free, and I can speak my mind about whatever I want to. I can say the truth no matter what it is, no matter who it's going to offend. Now, if I put this out there and YouTube comes down and says, Lunduke, I'm going to strike, I'm going to give you a community strike, and I'm going to make it so you can't publish to YouTube for a while. Like, okay. There's like a million ways people get the Lunduke Journal. That's fantastic. It won't have an impact on me at all. You go nuts, YouTube. So we'll see. We'll see if they actually end up censoring me for this one, but I have my guess that they will. So anyway, go to lunduke.com. $89 for a lifetime subscription all December long. That's a pretty sweet deal. It's normally a lot more than that. And yeah, you can also grab 50% off monthly and yearly lifetime or monthly and yearly subscriptions up there as well. Lunduke.com. And the frog in my throat almost made me forget. Thank you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart to all the subscribers, monthly and yearly, and especially to these lifetime subscribers. You guys put an enormous vote of trust and faith in me. And it means a lot. It means the world. So I put those of you who have asked to be on the wall up on the wall. Here's wall number 1. There's wall number 2. The wall number 2 needs to get a couple more people added. I only add lifetime subscribers there who want to be outed. If you want to be a lifetime subscriber, but keep that on the DL, no problem. I'll only add you if you ask. But I couldn't do it without you, man. All of you are fantastic. The Lunduke Journal would not be possible without you. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, nerds and nerdettes across the inner tubes, I do declare, end broadcast.